Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sharon Whiteman, and I'm partnering with Gary Knapp and Diana Hunter to bring this Saturday morning training call to Australasia and around the globe. We often have international guests as well. We appreciate you and we love being here with you every Saturday morning where possible. And today we're very privileged to have Dr. Steve Nugent. He's Manitech's Chief Science Officer and Chairman of the Global Scientific Advisory Board. He has more than 40 years of experience in the area of integrative medicine. He has tested more than 6,000 dietary supplement products and formulated more than 100. He's internationally recognized as an expert in his field and has been teaching doctors for more than 30 years. He is Manitech's most requested speaker worldwide. He has earned multiple degrees, graduating with top honors at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. His areas of studies include integrative medicine, health and wellness psychology, leadership psychology, organizational psychology, neuropsychology, biological anthropology, nutrition science, and business administration. Dr. Nugent has served as president of the International Association of Complementary Medicine and is president emeritus of the American Naturopathic Medical Association. He is a professional member of the American College of Nutrition and was also awarded the Servant's Heart Award by Manitech Associates in 2007. Dr. Nugent is one of Australasia's favorites. He carries the heart for the health, well-being, and education of everyone he meets. He's passionate about giving the power of wellness back into the hands of everyday people. And you want to, if you haven't already invited your guests and the people that you love and care about today, you'll be able to share the recording with them because this is the gift that just keeps on giving, really. So Dr. Nugent, God bless you for being here for us always, and we appreciate you. And I hope you had a wonderful 70th birthday last weekend.
I did, and especially with you folks kicking it off, that was just the greatest thing. I love that. I truly did, and appreciate it very, very much.
We did too. It was awesome, Dr. Nugent, and a special thank you to Gary for doing the final edit of the video so we could take out all our admin stuff. So that video is in the archive, and Dr. Nugent, I'll go off camera and get my pen and paper ready.
All right, now I will bring up our slides. And we will get underway. There we go. Or not. All righty. We went a few slides too far. Hang on a minute. There we go. Been having some peculiar issues with my computer the last few days. Oh well. Okay, folks. Today, yes, today it's evening for me in Texas, but for you, it's, I'm sure, a wonderful morning in Australasia. So this morning we're going to be talking about glycans and getting a better understanding of them. I'll give you a little preface to what made me create this presentation. In fact, I showed pretty close to this presentation at Manifest, not precisely what you're about to see, but very close to it. And the reason I did is because we have new senior personnel at Manitech at this time who came aboard not knowing anything about what Manitech was or what Manitech does, and especially they didn't understand glycans. And as I spent time attempting to explain to them various things that really they were shocked and surprised and kind of taken off guard by our amazing technology, I thought to myself, there must be a lot of people who don't know about Manitech who need this kind of basic training to really understand what glycan technology is about. And what you're going to learn is there's some pretty darn interesting information about glycans. I will be talking with you a little bit about the Nobel Prize, which was awarded in 2022, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And that Nobel Prize could not have been awarded had it not been for glycan technology. So if there was ever a time to be talking about glycans, this is the time. And it's about time after all of the years that we've been trying to tell the world. Well, to begin with, Manitech, you've heard me say many times, Manitech is the science company. And that's the way I see us, because Of all of the companies in our industry, I am certain, have spent more money than anyone else on science, scientific research, scientific equipment. We have a fabulous scientific lab to allow us to do the basics so that we can understand what do we want to work with, what plants are we working with, what can we extract from those plants to improve the health of others around the world. Well, we've spent tens of millions of dollars. I don't know how much money now. I've lost track. But clearly, we've spent more than anyone in our industry. And there are, I would say, the vast majority, I won't give you a specific number, but it's likely that there are fewer than 10 out of 4,000 companies that have a lab of any kind at all. And ours is quite impressive, but I won't spend too much time on our lab. Well, we invented, or I should say we pioneered, we've invented so many things, I keep saying that word. We pioneered a new field of science. There is no company in our industry that can say that except us, because, hey, we're the science company. But this confuses people. So there's two fields to talk about here. We pioneered the field of nutritional glycobiology. That's different than glycobiology. So here's three different things to get clear. And again, I'm doing this because we had these new people that we hired, and I think they're going to be great for us going on into the future. But they were so confused with all these words and what do they mean and which one is which. And that's what we're going to do throughout this training this morning. So three different ideas. In glycobiology, which has been around since the early 60s, that's the study of glycans within the human body. So it's a very broad, general study. It's biology and how glycans work in biology, in human biology. Now, the second thing is the one that we pioneered. That's the science of nutritional glycobiology. Now, that's different because nutritional glycobiology is the science of applying nutrition using glycans to potentially improve human health. Now, that's very different than simply glycobiology in general. And then the third idea is glycan technology. Now, for many of you, if you've been around Manitech for years, the word glyconutrient has been used and used and used. It's actually not a real thing. It's something that was invented by our marketing department in 1996. It has gotten a lot of traction over the years, and there are a lot of people who think that a glycan is a glyconutrient. And you can call it that if you like, but in science, they're called glycans, and science is finally beginning to catch up to us now at Manitech. So what we make at Manitech is the third idea, and that is glycan technology. Now, our premier glycan technology, of course, is ambrotose, but we'll talk more as we proceed. It's important for everyone to know that we have achieved more than 150 patents during the lifespan of our company, which now is more than 30 years. That's also pretty extraordinary because approximately 96% of all of the companies in our industry fail in less than 4 years, about 96%. So we've been here for 30 years, and that says something really important. But 150 science-related patents. I say that because I laugh every time I think about this. There's a competitor that tells their sales associates that they have 53 patents. Well, that's not a lie, they do, except they're on packaging. They're not on science or products. And that's why I always have to chuckle. But their associates don't know the difference. They walk around telling people, well, our company has 53 patents. Mm-hmm. Do you know what they're on? No. Well, anyway, ours are related to science and exclusive technologies that no one else had done before Manitech. So I think that's pretty important. We also use exclusive agreements for various types of ingredients that we want to make sure that we have available for our people and that you can't get them anywhere else except through us. and of course our state-of-the-art lab, as I talked to you about before. So glycans make us who we are. And I say who we are, I'm talking about human beings. I'm not talking about Manatech. Glycans make human beings who we are. Now, a lot of people have thought about glycans, and they were calling them glyconutrients, and they thought about them in terms of, oh, well, it helps my immune system or something like that. Well, it does a lot more than that. Obviously, it does help your immune system, but glycans actually make us who we are. I'm going to show this to you, and I think you'll appreciate this. But first, let me talk to you very briefly about the 2022 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Now, I have to tell you that the research is so complicated that even one of the members of the Nobel Prize committee who attempted to explain it, well, he was struggling. He just couldn't, because as a scientist, he wanted to explain all the detail, and yet he knew that the average person couldn't understand what he was saying. So he struggled with it. And I've thought about this myself. It is kind of a struggle to describe it. So I'm going to put this in the simplest possible terms that I think everyone can understand and say to others as well, because that's important. You need to be able to tell others about this. Well, the background for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2022, which, by the way, was awarded to 3 scientists, which is very unusual. It's usually 1 scientist. But these 3 scientists all played a critical role in creating this new technology. Well, the lead scientist is a chemist. She's a synthetic chemist by training, but she became very interested in glycans. Once she began to understand how complicated and how important they were, she became really interested in them. And obviously, she has become an expert in glycan technology now. Well, her name is Dr. Carol Bartozzi, and she first invented a brand new science before her work on this Nobel Prize, which is just astounding. What a brilliant, brilliant scientist she is. So she's a synthetic chemist. Now, in chemistry, and I'll do this very, very simply and briefly, everybody's seen the pictures and the movies and so on, where you have the mad scientist lab and they've got all the beakers with colored liquids in it and things boiling on, over a Bunsen burner and so on. Okay. Well, when you're doing synthetic chemistry, all of your reactions are controlled, and they're all done in test tubes or in beakers and in a controlled environment. Well, the human body is way more complicated than that. So it's fairly easy to create controlled experiments that are in a very closely defined controlled environment that has no outside variables. Variables are important in science because we have to really examine all the potential variables on any study we do to arrive at a valid conclusion from our study. Well, she thought she wanted to find a way to have chemical reactions in an organic environment, not in a beaker or in a test tube. So she had to create a whole new science to make that happen, and she did. Then she moved from there with a theory that she had developed using glycans. And here is how this works in a very oversimplified nutshell, if you will. Glycans are key to cellular communication. In fact, there is, and I say this boldly and proudly, there is no reaction in the human body that does not involve glycans. Nothing. Folks, it's way more important than your immune system. Yes, your immune system. Yes, glycans help your immune system and your brain, and et cetera, et cetera. But the reason that glycans help all of these things is because of cellular communication. No function can occur in the body without cellular communication. I'm going to show you a picture in a few moments that will really surprise you about how glycans, how dense they are on cells. I'll show you that in a few moments. So she realized that if we wanted to have a reaction occur in an organic environment, in this case, a living organism, okay, and hopefully the human body. Now, the initial experiments were not in humans, but that's our next step post them earning the Nobel Prize for this technology. So basically, this was what she was looking to do. And I should say all three of them. There was a team of 3 scientists, and we don't want to neglect the other 2, obviously, who played key roles in this, which is why the 3 of them shared the prize. Okay. So if you were to take a chemotherapy drug and you were to tag it with a particular glycan, and so bond them together, and then take a corresponding glycan and tag a target cell that you want the chemotherapy to hit, if you could do that successfully, then the chemo would enter the body and cause no damage and no side effects and no bad reactions in the host body, while it went directly to and only to the target cell. Now, I want you to think about this, folks. That will be amazing. If they've done this in the animal model and it has worked, and if they're able to do this in human beings, and I don't see any reason why they won't be able to. And of course, good science means you take years of study for safety reasons. You know, just roll something out, you know, because you're in a hurry. You have to take years of study for safety reasons. And if this works, and I believe it will, this will be the single most important advance for all of the people planet-wide who are in need of chemotherapy. It'll never be a question again of, well, maybe the side effects are worse than the disease. That won't be a question anymore if they succeed. And I think they will. And I think this is amazing and astounding. And folks, it couldn't happen without glycans. This is why now more than ever before, we need to be talking about glycans correctly, as the scientific community is finally talking about it. And that's why I'm asking all of you, please, if you say glyconutrients all the time, please begin to condition yourself to say glycans instead of glyconutrients, okay? So now you know. I'm sorry I spent a lot of time on that, but I think it's super important. All right, so I said that glycans make us who we are. Well, they do. And some of you have seen this slide, or perhaps one similar to it before. But you're looking at 2 factors that are identical in every single blood type. And then you see a lot of different colored ellipses that are underneath each one of these blood types with abbreviations in it. Well, those abbreviations represent glycans. Literally, your blood type is decided by glycans. That's the difference. That's the only difference. And glycans are so important, but that's just the beginning. A study on the human glycome, I know you've heard about the human genome. Some of you may have heard about the human proteome. That's the study of proteins throughout the human body. But in 2011, some Japanese scientists began to study the human glycome, and that's how glycans work throughout the body. And that study is still ongoing. Now, in genetics, talking about the human genome, in genetics, we know that a yeast cell, which is a one-celled organism, so a yeast cell, has 6,000 genes. Well, it's pretty simple. There's not much to it. It's not very complicated. It can't think, can't write books or design buildings or anything like that. And we know from a study which was completed actually before 1999 on the fruit flies, and we know from that study that fruit flies have 20,000 genes. Well, the scientists who were doing the human genome study they thought, well, that makes sense because fruit flies are hugely more complicated than a yeast cell, so it makes sense. And from that, they said, maybe human beings will have at least 100,000 genes, or maybe even more genes than that, because we are so much more complicated than a fruit fly. Well, here's what they found out. We only have 25,000 genes. Whoa, wait a minute. This mathematical equation does not line up. If you look at the ratios here, it doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense. We are so much more complicated than fruit flies, but we only have 5,000 more genes than a fruit fly. Well, and only 19,000 more genes than a yeast cell. Oh, what's going on? So the scientist in charge of that study, he started really doing some analysis here. What is it that makes us different than lower organisms, like fruit flies as an example? What makes us so much more different if we only have 5,000 more genes? Well, it's actually pretty interesting. He said it's due to post-translational modification of genes. And what he really meant by that scientific word salad, what he meant was that on each of our cells is this incredible forest of glycans, each having a tremendous set of functions that's unique to it, each signaling something else, each translating communications. So we only needed 25,000 genes, but we needed incredible numbers of glycans to make everything work. Literally, folks, we are who we are because of glycans. Well, before I try and explain to you how glycans work, some of you've heard me say this before, and some of you may be new, and maybe you haven't heard me say it before, but objectivity is the foundation of science. Objectivity does not come natural to human beings. In fact, we appear to be genetically programmed to be subjective. And so, in fact, when you're studying the sciences, you actually have to study, you have to learn how to think objectively, write objectively, act objectively. It's very unnatural to human beings. Well, subjectively, what people tend to do is they say, well, I had problem A, I took substance B, and problem A went away, which obviously means that substance B cures problem A. That's the subjective viewpoint. But that's not science. Science would require an objective investigation, eliminating all of the variables, those obvious and those unobvious. So I just wanted to say that to start, because what we know about glycans from objective scientific study tells us that glycans are not medications, they're not treatments, they are astoundingly important communicators and signal molecules that make everything work in your body, everything. So if your immune system improves, it's not because a glycan was a medicine that cured item A, it's because your immune system received all of the correct communication, direction, fuel because of communication, nutrients because of communication, cells that partnered with them in the fight because of communication. It was all about communication. We know that there are 8 glycans which are necessary for optimal cellular communication. And we know that if you are missing any of the 8, your communication will not be well. So that gives you the theory that says, well then, is it possible that people who are less than healthy are less than healthy because they're missing important glycans at important receptor sites? That's a valid question. It's one I believe that the answer is yes. And of course, science continues to support this in the studies. Now, you've seen a graphic like this before. I have a couple of different ones like this. The company has been using one like this for a long time. And this graphic is to make it simple to understand, because in a moment, I'm going to show you what it really looks like. This is not what it really looks like. But the purpose of this graphic is to show you those receptor sites. So you see the little coils coming up out of the cell, and on the end of the coil, you have all these little beads, all right? Each of those beads represents what's called a glycoprotein. Now, a glycoprotein is a glycan and a protein that have bonded together, okay? So glycan and protein, now we have a glycoprotein. It's the glycoprotein then that sends the cellular communication. So each of those little beads that you see is a separate glycoprotein that knows certain things to communicate about. It can serve certain functions, but not other functions. So if some of those beads are missing, then you would have less than normal healthy function, okay? That's the way it works. Now, let me show you the way it really looks. Now, this is the way the surface of a cell looks underneath an electron microscope. And they've used a colored dye to highlight the receptor sites. You are looking at sugar coating, because it's appropriate to say that a glycan is a cell surface sugar, although I don't like to say it that way too much, because they're cell surface carbohydrates. But what you're looking at now is a veritable rainforest, a jungle of these receptor sites that are all coated with their little beads, their glycoproteins. And look how thick, how dense it is. You can't, if you're looking straight down at the cell, and this is a side view, obviously, but if you're looking straight down at the cell, you can't see the cell surface. That's how thick the glycans are. Now, why in the world would the body have so many glycans on one cell? That's just one cell. Why would it have so many of the glycans on there unless they were critically important? And they are critically important for your health, for all aspects of your health. I'm going to give you a quick timeline here, put some things in perspective from the Manitech world. So it was in 1995 that there was an article published in a publication called Nature. And this article, in the study of glycobiology, because nutritional glycobiology was invented later, okay? In the area of glycobiology, they were studying cell surface sugar structures for recognition and function in the immune system. Now, that got a lot of people excited, because most people are concerned about their immune systems. You know, am I going to be protected from this or that? And you know, can my body fight off this or that? Okay, so that was important. Then in 1995, we were given a new technology. We called that technology Manilo. So MAN-A-L-O-E, Manilo. And it was called Manilo because this was the functional component of the aloe plant, but put into a capsule. Now, the functional component is a cell surface sugar called mannose, right? Mannose can be found in many forms. So mannose in maple syrup is not going to function the same way as it functions in from an aloe vera plant. So just so you know that, all right? So when some people say, well, mannose is mannose, no, that's not the case. All mannose is not the same. I mean, the structure of the molecule is essentially the same, but the end function is going to be greatly dependent on the source, okay? Now, in 1996, there was a publication by, which was edited by a great and dear friend of mine, Dr. Robert Murray, and the publication was called Harper's Biochemistry, his medical textbook. And in that, Dr. Murray identified the 8 glycans for cellular communication. Now, in 1995, we had been marketing Manilow for immune function because that's where all the studies had been. And we didn't really realize in 1995 what we had our hands on yet. So after the glycans for cellular communication had been identified, then later in 1996, Manitech created the world's first, and today still the world's only plant-based complex specifically designed to support cellular communication, and that's called ambrotose complex. That's the first one in the world, and still, because of our exclusive technology that cannot be duplicated, I want to emphasize that strongly, even though the patent is expired, it still can't be duplicated because of exclusives that we have inside of the formula itself. So that's kind of the timeline there. Now, there are actually 10 glycans in ambrotose. There's always been 10 from day one. But the creator of ambrotose, Dr. Bill McAnally, he wanted to ensure that we had the simplest message. So he never talked about the other 2. He just talked about the 8 for cellular communication. Just think of the other 2 as a bonus. Those are bonus glycans for you. So again, there's always been 10, and there still are. Now, here are the 10, and I highlighted in yellow those which are necessary for cellular communication. Your 2 bonus glycans there are on the end, number 9 and number 10, okay? So just in case you wanted to see that, because there's always somebody who wants to get high tech on me and ask me a technical question that may have absolutely no value when they get the answer, but people are people. So some people always want to say to me, I want to know what they look like. Well, okay. And I think the first time I got that question, I thought, what does it matter what they look like? But then I thought, you know what? Some people want to see this. So here's your diagram. And here's what the cell structures look like. In case you're one of the folks that needs to see the structure, there you are. All right. Let's be clear on this. We no longer consume the ancestral diet. There's a lot of people who don't think about that much. They just go about their business every day and eat what they want to eat. And generally, especially in modern society, you can eat what you wish to eat rather than perhaps what you should be eating. You know what I mean, all right? And so because we no longer eat the ancestral diet, we're not getting the nutritional levels or even the same nutrients that our ancestors got for thousands of years. According to scientists who study this, and this is not my area of study, so I'm not here to confirm it or refute it, but they tell us that the human race has been around for in excess of 330,000 years. And they tell us that we didn't have farming until about 11,000 years ago. We also know from the fossil record, because physical anthropologists and those who are forensic anthropologists, they can look at fossilized bones and they can tell you a lot about the health of the individual that they're analyzing. They can tell you a lot about what diseases the person had or didn't have. And what we know is when we started farming, we got sicker. Yeah, not better, we got worse. Why? The human body apparently was developed over time. Whether you believe in evolution or adaptation, I'm not going to argue the point with anybody. And I'm not an evolutionary scientist, so I'm not here to say I can confirm that. In fact, it's a theory. It's not. It's not a fact. That's why it's called a theory. All right. Adaptation, however, is a fact. We do know that living organisms adapt to stress, and they adapt to their environment, or they die. That's simple. And with this in mind, the human body seems to have adapted over who knows how many centuries, generations, to eat a varied hunter-gatherer diet, not to eat refined foods. Now, in 1911, when the technology came up to refine grain into a fine white powder that we call flour, we started to see more heart disease within 5 years after that. Human beings simply aren't designed to eat most of what we eat today. They're just not. And so our diet is different. And our organic machine, that's what I call our bodies, our organic machine is under more stress than it was for our ancestors. I mean, if you think about this for a minute, our ancient ancestors, for the majority of the 330,000 years, if that's correct, I mean, they had to worry about what fig leaf to wear in the morning, maybe. They had to worry about predatory animals, sometimes predatory humans. Unfortunately, that still is the case today. But they didn't have the kinds of stresses that they didn't have to worry about their finances and their housing and all the politics, all these things that are going on that just stress the heck out of us every day. In fact, right now, the number of people seeking mental health help in modern countries is higher than it's ever been in history. We've got a lot of stress out there, folks, lots of stress. And stress reduces nutrients in your body. I could do a whole hour on that. So our bodies are under extraordinary stress just from psychological issues and to some extent physical issues as well. And in addition to that, we have the environmental stress, and the environmental stress keeps getting worse. Right now, my friends, and think about this, this is powerful, 67 countries, and yet last count there were 192 countries, and somebody always sends me an email after I do a presentation like this, there's this many countries. You know what? There are revolutions and governments get overthrown. There's been 7 or 8 coups in Africa in 2023. The last time I checked, there was 192 countries. So 67 of those countries now have laws. They have mandated that food manufacturers, so these are people who make the bread that you buy on the shelf, and they make the packaged food. And so food manufacturers and food suppliers, that they add nutrition to the food. Why are they mandating this? Because it isn't there. Now, it is true that it's not the full spectrum of every nutrient known to humankind. In most of these countries, it's at this time 2 or 3 or 4 nutrients. But the fact that they have to have a government mandate to order food manufacturers to add nutrition to the food, that says something important, doesn't it? It says that we're not eating the ancestral diet and we're not getting the nutrition that our ancestors got. Now, here's a graphic to look at. You can see this was a study done on hunter-gatherers, and there's still a few tribes left in the world, not too many, but on hunter-gatherers and how they eat and how modern human beings eat. And it is assumed by the researchers that our ancestors, as hunter-gatherers, ate in a very similar fashion to today's hunter-gatherer tribes. These are tribes who choose not to interact with us, and it may be in their best interest not to interact with us. So you can see there's a huge difference here. Look at the refined grains that we consume. Awful. All right, so the average human diet is providing 2 of the necessary 8 and providing those 2 in great quantities. And we're pretty confident that just about everybody, maybe everybody, is getting at least those 2. But what we also know is that if you're missing 1 of the 8, you will not have proper function. And if you are having dysfunction, that leads to less than perfect health. Hopefully that should make sense to everyone. So if something's missing from the diet, what do? You supplement your diet. That's what a dietary supplement is meant to do. That's the purpose. Now, some people will say to me, well, I had item A and I took substance B and item A is gone, so Why do I need to keep taking substance B? I feel fine. I hope that that earlier graphic of the tremendous, incalculable number of glycans on the surface of one cell, just one cell, I hope that that made a visual impression on you, where you can see from that you need a lot of glycans. Well, here's the next step. Why should you take them every single day? Well, you need proper function every single day, don't you? Some cells have a lifespan of only hours, and I haven't listed every cell in the human body. So I want you to look just at the first block. Those are immune-related cells that you're looking at there, all right? Some of them have a lifespan of only 10 hours. Now, when they die, they need to be replaced, which, by the way, that order to replace the cell requires glycans to give the communication and the order, just to make that clear for everyone. So when those cells are dead 10 hours later, what do the brand new cells need? They need glycans right now. They're looking for them. Some of them can live for days. There are some cells of the body that can actually live for years, but some of those cells with longer lifespans can only hold the glycan on the receptor site for 10 days. So that cell may live for years, but every 10 days, it's looking for more glycans. Your cells don't do a neat parade for you where they all die at the same moment, replaced at the same moment. So you've taken your glycans in the morning and your body waits for you to do that. It doesn't work like that. These cells are different cells. There are 32.7 trillion cells in your body, dying and being replaced by the nanosecond. Millions and millions of cells every nanosecond are dying and being replaced. They're all looking for glycans. They're looking for them right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, right now. Now, why should you take your glycans every day? This is why. More than 50% of our ambertose product, and that is, once again, the first and only plant-based complex specifically designed for cellular communication. More than 50% of that product is made with exclusive ingredients. Because those ingredients are exclusive to us, the product cannot be duplicated. And there are 2 of those ingredients. And if for whatever reason we lost exclusivity on one, well, we still have another one where you still can't duplicate the product. So that's important. 100% pure aloe powder obtained through a special proprietary source that we use that provides our product that we trade named as Manipol. And by the way, Manalow was Manipol in a capsule. We've gotten pretty good at the process. We continue to improve this. So now it takes only 415 kilograms of aloe leaf to make 1 kilo of Manipol. 415 kilograms of aloe leaf is a massive pile of aloe leaf. That's a massive amount. Okay, again, 3 different things because there seems to be confusion here. There's the plant source of the glycans. There are the glycans themselves, and then there is the glycan technology. Here's what I mean. And people get these confused. And I don't blame them for being confused. If I was a person who had never heard about Manitech and I went to the Manitech website, I would think that Manitech's an aloe company. It would be my first and probably strongest impression. And I would think, because of government regulations that require us not necessarily to list the ingredient, but rather to list the plant, it makes people think that we've got the plant inside of the product. We don't. So the plant, if we're talking about Manipol as an example, the plant is aloe. That's the plant source of the glycan. The plant is not the glycan. We, through a special process, we extract the glycan from the aloe gel. We then discard the gel and the leaf and all that, and it becomes fertilizer for the next crop. Pretty interesting, really. So the glycan is a teeny tiny fraction. Think about it again. 415 kilograms of leaf to create 1 kilo of powder. That means we're using a very, very tiny amount of active from the aloe. So aloe is not in the container. That's not what's there. What's there is the glycans from the aloe. It's the ingredient that counts. It's not the plant that counts. Hopefully you understand that. So the plant, the glycan itself that we extract from the plant, and the glycan technology that we make from the glycans we've extracted from the plant. So the technology obviously is Ambrotose. We also have an exclusive called Ambrogard. It is a premium form of arabinogalactan, and there are different sources out there of information which get people confused. Arabinogalactan can be extracted from both either the western or the eastern larch tree that grows in North America. It can come from either one, so it isn't just the western, and I see that all the time in our literature and so on. It's eastern and western, just to be clear. All right, that's been studied all by itself. That arabinogalactan powder has been studied all by itself in a very interesting study that was done with vaccines. So it was a controlled human study, and in the human study, what they found was that the one group, so you had different control groups, right? And the one group that received the arabinogalactan had a better response to the vaccine than the other two groups that had been studied. This tells us a lot about immunomodulation. Modulation means balancing of the immune system. So not stimulating, not suppressing, but balancing it. So that's immunomodulation. That's what you want, because balance is wellness. That should be your target, okay? So arabinogalactan all by itself, and I've said this repeatedly, and I don't run the marketing department. I don't make those decisions. I'm just a science guy. But I've said this repeatedly, that arabinogalactan, our premium form that we use, it could be a product all by itself. It's so good. And you may not be aware of this, but recently we raised that in Ambrotose, and nobody made any fanfare about it at all. So I'm making some fanfare about it right now, because raising it was my idea and they agreed with me. So we did that. All right. So the Ambrotose technology, as I said, it can't be duplicated. It's been third-party clinically tested, and most of our competitors can't say that about their products, any of their products. And before I go into this, let me spend a moment. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but we did start late, so I'm not sure where I'm at in terms of the total time on for this recording. But I want to say something that's very, very important. We had, during the last few years, as all of you know, because the entire world experienced the same thing, we had a lot of supply chain issues that occurred. And we at Manatech had never seen supply chain issues like this before. We have been so careful and so good at making sure that our supply chain was always strong, and that we weren't going to run short of things. And we even tried to hedge against things like weather and so on as much as we could. But during the last few years, these were conditions beyond any human being's control. And supply chain problems were frequent. And all of you right now, you have no idea how hard Manatech was scrambling. Literally, we were scrambling to make sure product could keep getting out to you, because our regular supply chain people, and even our backup supply chain people, and then we had other issues like ships were stuck in port for months, and sometimes ships were made to just sail around. They wouldn't let them close to a port in some cases. and things that needed to be refrigerated just went bad because refrigeration containers couldn't be properly maintained. Oh, the whole problem that went on with this. And then to top all of this off, we had, for the first time ever, we had received an ingredient that had a bacterial contaminant. Now, nobody got that ingredient because good safety practices, we make sure that everything is double checked and triple checked. And so, no one was at risk. But the point is, it was an ingredient that we've been buying from the same place since 1996. Always been reliable, always passed all of the tests for safety. But this time it didn't. Now that held us up for the better part of a year. That actually backed up about $2.5 million worth of ambertose complex that could not be made and delivered to our people in various markets. And when this happened, that's when we had to think fast. And my suggestion was, well, let's not worry about that plant source. Let's make sure we have the same glycan, which we can do. I know where we can get it. So instead of getting that one glycan from one plant source in one country, we now are getting the same glycan, exactly identically the same glycan, from a different plant source, but available from 5 countries. It really makes me feel better to know that we have that potential backup. And that made me think a lot about what if our farm in Costa Rica, and I love that farm, and those of you who've been there and enjoyed it or seen the films, then you probably loved it too. It's fabulous. But there's an active volcano in less than 5 kilometers from the edge of the farm. There's an active volcano. Now the volcano is always smoking, okay? And volcanologists tell us that as long as it's letting off steam, it won't, explode, right? But what if it did? If it did, our entire operation would be destroyed in minutes. It's also because there's an active volcano there, that means it's a seismically active zone. So that means earthquakes occur, and earthquakes do occur there all the time. Now, fortunately, they occur as very small earthquakes, lots of little small ones, nothing catastrophic. But what if there was something catastrophic? So just as I had to react quickly with this one ingredient for ambertose, which we did react to it, and we got it all taken care of. And in fact, we have a better product now than we had to begin with, because that gave me the opportunity to raise the arabinogalactan in the product, which I'm just so happy about. So it's actually a better product as a result. But it made me think that, we're going to have backup just in case. So we began to look at glycans, mannose from aloe, but from other sources just in case, because things can happen. And I want you to know, and I want you to feel good that we are on the job all the time. And you may not hear about it, nobody publicizes it, and marketing doesn't put out a bulletin on it, but we're on the job all the time, and we're thinking about these things. So just so you know, for the future. All right. So breaking these down, people always say to me, what's the difference between ambertose life and ambertose complex and advanced ambertose? We still have a couple of countries that have advanced ambertose. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this on the slide at all, but there's still a couple that do. Right now, you can see the differences, and there's not a huge amount of difference in the 3 products. A couple of key differences. First of all, the base formula is identical. Any ambertose we make is always going to be based on ambertose complex, all of them, okay? Because ambertose complex is the technology. In fact, ambertose complex is what I personally take, and I have taken all this time, and I hope it's always going to be available for me to take, because that's what I take. Now, one of the differences between life and complex, and this was a marketing thing, our marketing guy said, well, we have to be able to say that there's more manopole in life than in complex. So they added 5 milligrams more. Okay, so there is more, it's 5 milligrams. But look at the difference between the amount of manopole in advanced ambertose and either complex or life. It's almost double the difference. So that did make a difference in that formula. And perhaps some other time, because we're running short of time here, some other time I might talk with you folks about that whole history of how advanced ambertose actually evolved. But anyway, it's being taken out of all of our markets as soon as we can, because we've got better products. Okay. All right. There are fucoidins from wakame, from a particular seaweed, that are in life and also in advanced. The original fucoidins are in all three formulas. And so in that respect, that's all the same. The fucoidins that are added, rather than being balancers, modulators, these fucoidins that have been added, they can stimulate your immune system a little bit. And the only problem with that, if you have a health challenge where your immune system is always above normal, you don't want to make it go farther above normal, because that could potentially cause your symptoms, not going to harm you, but it can potentially make your symptoms feel worse rather than better. Now, that's the case for me, and that's why I take complex and I don't use life. Okay, and that's really the only reason why I do it. So in addition to that, in the base of life, you have stabilized rice bran, and in the other two products, you have a base of rice starch. We found out in an experiment, and it really surprised us, by the way. We were not looking for this, but sometimes you get these surprises in science when you're doing experiments. We found out that there were immune supportive properties in the rice starch. We thought we were just using it as a formulation ingredient to keep things together in the product, and it actually has immune supporting properties all by itself that we've never talked about before. So I actually feel pretty good about that. Now, the glucosamine is exactly the same. It's identical in all three formulas. In life, we've added a little bit of modified citrus pectin. You already have allopectin in all three, and always did. But I think our marketing people never knew that, and shame on me, I never told them that. So they never marketed it. But we've always had pectin in all three formulas, and the allopectin that we have is actually more effective than the modified citrus pectin for its purpose. But regardless, there is modified citrus pectin added to life. Life also has sodium alginate, which can help you to detoxify heavy metals. Not all heavy metals have been tested, just a few. But this is a question of reverse polarity of molecules, like the opposite poles of a magnet, okay? So the like poles, they repel, the opposite poles, they attract. So what you have with sodium alginate, it has an opposite electric charge to certain heavy metals. It attracts them and helps to carry them outside of the body. Now, it's really not, if you need big time detoxification, you should buy a sodium alginate product and take the full recommended amount, because this is added to the formula as a sort of bonus in life. I wouldn't call it anywhere close to the full recommended amount for if you really need massive detoxification. All right. All three formulas are vegan friendly. All three formulas are kosher. And so this has been the product that I've recommended for everyone since 1996. If you choose life, or if you live in one of the countries that has advanced and you choose that certainly is your choice. Ambertose complex is the one I use every day. We also know, because when somebody says cell surface sugars, or they say, nutritional sugars or something like that, what people think, because they don't know what glycobiology is or nutritional glycobiology, they hear the word sugar, they think, oh my God, that's bad. It tastes great, but it makes me fat and it gives me blood sugar problems. Okay. First of all, it doesn't taste great. Put ambertose in your mouth. It doesn't taste great. All right. That's that. And it's not table sugar right away. But we did a human double-blind placebo-controlled study to test people's blood sugar using 4 grams of ambertose. And by the way, I have recommended to marketing, and I'm not responsible for labels, A different department does them, approves them. That's not up to me, okay? But I've recommended that the label be changed to show 4 grams once daily, because these will stay active in your body all day. So you just need to take them once a day. Most people will take their supplements once a day. In fact, about 70%, according to survey. Only about 40% of people will take their supplements twice a day. I want to make sure you get your 4 grams every day. So that first time in the morning, just give yourself 4 grams right away, okay? Anyway, we tested this with human beings. We drew their blood. There was 0 change in blood sugar up or down. So Ambertose didn't affect their blood sugar in any way. You don't have to be worried about that. And some people say, well, I think I'm allergic to aloe. Well, my first question is, how would you even know that? Do you eat aloe plants? Anyway, so the allergen in aloe is in the yellow sap. We do not use the yellow sap for obvious reasons. It has an allergen in it. Why would we use it? And it doesn't contain anything that's of any value to anyone. So for that reason, we don't use it. However, if you believe you have an allergy, always, I don't care what the product is we're talking about, I don't care what it is. If you think you may be allergic to something, you take this product to your doctor, you have proper testing, and you make sure you're safe. Safety always first. These are things we know from scientific study. Most of these studies are human, double-blind, placebo-controlled. We know in human beings, we know that Ambertose improves cellular communication. Not a question, it's fact. We know it improves brain function. We know it improves memory function and concentration and attentiveness and mood and decreasing irritability and, of course, immune support, which is what 99% of people buy Ambertose for. And we also know it can help to improve digestive function and digestive health, because it is a prebiotic which feeds your probiotic. And we've done a couple of studies on that as well. And by the way, folks, we have 7 brain studies, 7. So if you're looking for something for your brain and you want scientific evidence to show that it works, well, the answer is Ambertose. And the majority of our studies, by the way, are on complex because it is our oldest product. And that, folks, we went a little bit over time. Again, we started late. I don't know what time we started, but that's the Understanding Glycan presentation.
That was perfect, Dr. Nugent. Don't question yourself. There's lots of engagement and gratitude in and also gratitude for you thinking ahead around the supply things. There's nothing like a wake-up call, is there?
Boy, that was a wake-up call. As soon as we got our first supply chain problem, it was like, oh my gosh, we've never thought about this.
I know the world's changed, hasn't it? And there is one question. Did you want to comment at all on the emergence of synthetic glycans that are happening in the market?
Yeah, so far, and I can't predict what will happen in science in the future. The evidence suggests, as we say in science, that synthetics are not going to be able to replace the function of natural glycans. What the synthetics are being used for now are specific targeted functions, and we'll see. I mean, synthetic glycans have been worked on since, well, probably 97, 98, and so far with not a lot of good responses. But when you think of the overwhelming complexity of what glycans do, the probability that science anytime in the near future, or maybe never, will be able to make a synthetic replace the natural is pretty slim.
Awesome. Dr. Nugent, God bless you. Thank you very much for your time and contributions to Australasia. We deeply appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye-bye, folks.
Bye-bye.